The auditorium smelled of fresh polish and cheap flowers. Rows of parents held up phones, clapping proudly as names were called one by one. When the announcer finally said mine, I stood from the folding chair, heart hammering, legs shaking. I had worked nights at the diner, mornings tutoring, afternoons in class. Every single page of my thesis had been written with blistered fingers. This was supposed to be my moment. I walked up to the stage with a smile that felt too fragile. The spotlight was blinding, but I thought maybe, just maybe, today my parents would look at me with pride. Maybe for once I wouldn't be the mistake in their family album. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. But the moment I stepped up, I saw them. My dad sat in the front row, arms crossed like he was at a court trial, not his daughter's graduation. My mom leaned back in her seat, smirking like she'd been waiting for something cruel to happen. My sister, of course, sat between them in a designer dress they had bought her, whispering something that made both of them laugh while I clutched the folder that carried my degree. When I took the rolled-up diploma from the dean, a small cheer rose in the back of the hall. It wasn't my family. It was strangers, people who didn't even know me, clapping louder than the people who raised me. My eyes flicked toward my parents again. Dad hadn't moved. Mom rolled her eyes like she'd just watched a bad play. Then came the award. My professor called me back on stage for the Excellence in Research trophy. Heavy glass gleaming under the lights, something that meant hours of sleep lost had turned into something real, something visible. The audience clapped again, and I bit my lip, trying to hold back the tears that burned at the edges of my eyes. That's when my dad stood. At first, I thought stupidly that maybe he was going to clap, maybe he was finally proud. Instead, his boots pounded on the wooden steps as he stormed onto the stage. The microphone squealed when he grabbed it. "You think this makes her special?" he barked, holding up my degree folder like it was contaminated. "This is paper, nothing more, trash holding trash." Gasps rippled through the audience. My stomach flipped. "Dad, please?" I whispered, reaching for the folder, but before I could, he tore it down the middle. The sound of ripping echoed like thunder in the silent hall. My lungs froze. He ripped again until the degree that I had bled and starved for was nothing but scraps fluttering to the stage floor. The dean tried to step forward, but my father shoved him back with a glare that made him retreat. Then his eyes fell on the trophy in my trembling hands. "You think you're smart?" His voice was low, poisonous, the kind that made my knees weaken even before what happened next. "Smart doesn't fix being useless." Before I could move, before I could even breathe, he yanked the glass trophy from my grip. With one violent swing, he smashed it against my head. The world spun white, the sharp edge split my skin, warm blood trickled down my face and dripped onto the microphone stand. The audience screamed, people stood, but all I could hear was my mother's laugh slicing through the chaos. "That's the only crown she'll ever wear," Mom sneered, her voice ringing clear as my vision blurred. "Shards of glass. Finally, she looks like the trash she's always been." I staggered, knees buckling, the stage tilting beneath me. The glass trophy shattered around my feet, cutting into my shoes, but the deeper cut was in my chest, where their words carved me open more than the wound on my forehead ever could. Security rushed forward, professor shouted, but my dad raised his hand again like he wanted to strike me once more, and for a terrifying second I thought he would. My sister grabbed his arm, not to stop him, but to whisper something to him that made him smirk. "Now she knows she's worthless," Mom said loudly, standing and fixing her coat like nothing had happened. "Let's go. This show's over." As I bled on the stage, clutching the shards of my shattered trophy, I realized something burned stronger than pain, the knowledge that their cruelty had reached its peak. There was no love left to hope for, only revenge. And in that moment, with my blood dripping onto the ripped pieces of my degree, I swore silently they would regret every word, every laugh, every drop of blood they'd made me shed. Blood dripped steadily down my forehead as faculty members tried to guide me off stage, but all I could hear was the echo of my parents' laughter fading into the auditorium doors. The cheers that once filled the hall had turned into horrified murmurs. Some people looked away, like they couldn't bear to witness my humiliation, while others gawked as if I was a spectacle put on just for them. The medical staff from the university rushed in with towels, pressing one against my wound, but I barely felt it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My ears rang with my father's words, "Trash holding trash, useless." Hours later, in the ER, I stared at the ceiling tiles while a nurse stitched the gash above my brow. She tried to be kind, asking if my family was waiting for me outside. I laughed bitterly, the sound strange in my throat. "No," I whispered. "They're probably at dinner celebrating my sister." The truth stung more than the needle piercing my skin. While I lay on a stiff hospital bed with glass still embedded in my hair, I knew my parents were clinking glasses somewhere, proud of the daughter they always chose, while I was nothing more than a bleeding punchline to them. The next morning, I walked out of the hospital with my forehead wrapped, head aching, dignity shredded. My phone was silent. No call from my mom, no text from my dad, not even a sarcastic message from my sister. It was like I didn't exist. But the internet remembered. Clips of my father storming the stage spread across social media like wildfire. Strangers debated whether it was real or staged. Some pitied me. Others mocked me. Headlines screamed, "Father attacks daughter at graduation ceremony, trophy smashed on stage." My name was trending, not for my accomplishments, but for my humiliation. The university issued an apology, but apologies couldn't erase the way my classmates looked at me now. Pity in their eyes, whispers trailing behind me. Even professors avoided lingering too long in conversation, afraid of the shadow my father had cast over my name. I tried to drown myself in work, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw shards of glass falling in slow motion. I heard my mom's laugh. Finally, she looks like the trash she's always been. Nights became unbearable. I woke up drenched in sweat, clutching my pillow as if it could shield me from the memory. But eventually, pain twisted into something else, something sharper. Anger. Weeks passed. I found myself standing in front of the mirror one night, unwrapping the bandage. The scar above my brow glowed faintly under the bathroom light. Ugly, permanent. At first, I hated it. Then, slowly, I realized it was a reminder, not of what they did, but of what I had survived. I whispered to my reflection, "This is not the end. It's the beginning." Still, survival wasn't enough. I needed to make them feel it, to see them stripped bare, to watch their smug laughter curdle into silence. I started small. Information was power, and my parents had secrets, plenty of them. I knew because I had lived in the cracks of their lives, the forgotten child who overheard things they thought no one was listening to. Dad's construction business cut corners. I remembered nights he'd come home bragging about saving thousands by lying on permits, by bribing inspectors. I remembered my mom bragging to her friends about charity funds she'd redirected into her personal shopping accounts. And my sister, her entire glamorous lifestyle was funded by forged receipts and manipulation. I opened a notebook and started writing. Every detail I remembered, every name, every date, every slip of conversation they never thought mattered. But information alone wasn't enough. I needed a plan. So I started shadowing them quietly, sitting outside Dad's office in my old beat-up car, notebook in hand, watching Mom glide out of expensive boutiques with bags she claimed were donations for charity drives, following my sister's social media like a hawk, noting every post, every careless reveal of where she was, who she was with, what she was wasting money on. And while they lived their lives loudly, arrogantly, I stitched my plan together in silence. There was no rush. Revenge wasn't supposed to be fast. It had to be methodical, precise. I wanted them to choke slowly on the life they thought was untouchable. The scar above my brow itched as I wrote, night after night, but I welcomed it. It was like the wound was reminding me not to stop, not until they were on their knees. One evening, months later, I found myself back at the empty graduation hall. The lights were dim, the stage empty. but in my mind I could still hear the rip of my diploma, the smash of my trophy. I walked to the center of the stage and crouched, running my hand over the wood where my blood had stained. My chest tightened, but instead of tears, a dark smile curled on my lips. "This is where you broke me," I whispered, "so this is where I'll start breaking you." I walked out of the hall, leaving their silence behind me. It wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs, destruction. Months stretched into a year, and by then, the scar on my forehead had faded into a pale line, but inside me the wound still burned. My parents thought the silence meant they had won, that I had crumbled, disappeared into the background like the worthless shadow they always claimed I was. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't broken. I was patient. The first strike came quietly. Dad's construction company was preparing to announce a major new project, a multi-million-dollar development that he had bribed inspectors to approve. I had collected every scrap of evidence, forged permits, emails, late-night drunken confessions he didn't realize I had recorded on my phone. I didn't send them to the authorities right away. No, I slipped them anonymously to the rival developer who hated him most. By the time Dad realized his enemy had all the leverage, the contracts were canceled, his partners pulled out, and his empire started cracking. I didn't even need to show my face. His downfall had my fingerprints all over it, but he couldn't prove a thing. Mom was next. She loved her position on the local charity board, the photo shoots, the magazine spreads, the gossiping lunches with other wealthy women. What she didn't know was that I had tracked every false donation she pocketed for herself. Instead of exposing her publicly, I leaked it directly to the board's inner circle. They tore each other apart, whispering, pointing, and soon my mother was voted out in disgrace. The shopping bags stopped coming. The phone stopped ringing. The friends who once clung to her drifted away, pretending they never knew her. And my sister? My golden, untouchable sister, she was the easiest. She lived off their money and their lies. When those crumbled, she was left with nothing but debt she had piled up in her own arrogance. I didn't have to lift a finger. She drowned in her own vanity. But this wasn't enough. Revenge wasn't complete until they felt me, until they remembered the moment they tried to strip me of my worth and realized it was the moment they signed their own destruction. So I invited them. I rented out the same graduation hall where my humiliation had unfolded. I sent gilded invitations with no signature, just the words, "1 year later, come see what's left of your empire." They arrived, all three of them, confused, suspicious, but desperate. The hall was dark when they entered, the echo of their footsteps bouncing against the walls. On stage sat 3 objects, a ripped diploma in a glass frame, a shattered trophy glued back together, and a single spotlight shining down on them. My father stepped forward, jaw clenched. "What the hell is this?" I walked out of the shadows. My scar caught the light, their faces drained of color. "You remember this place," I said, voice steady. "This is where you tried to erase me, where you smashed what I worked for, where you called me trash." Mom sneered, though her voice wavered. "So what? You think you're some kind of hero now? You're still nothing." I smiled a calm, razor-sharp smile. "Funny. Nothing is what you have now." The projector lit up behind me. Document after document flashed on the giant screen. Dad's fraudulent permits, Mom's stolen charity funds, my sister's forged receipts. Their sins, their arrogance, their downfall displayed on the very stage they once destroyed me on. They lunged for the doors, but I had locked them. The only thing they could do was sit there, forced to watch their world unravel piece by piece. I didn't scream. I didn't hit them. I didn't need to. Their own voices, their own signatures, their own betrayals did the work for me. My father's fists shook. "You did this?" I leaned closer, lowering my voice so it sliced like a blade. "You smashed my future on this stage, so I smashed yours. Now every time you close your eyes, you'll hear this hall. You'll see me standing here, and you'll know I'm the one who ended you." They sat in silence, pale and broken. For the first time in my life, my parents had no laughter left, no sneers. no power. I walked out, leaving them in the dark, their disgrace echoing louder than any applause could. The scar on my forehead itched under the cool night air, but I touched it gently, almost like a crown. They had tried to make it the mark of my shame. Instead, it became the seal of their destruction. And for the first time since that stage, I felt whole. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.